Specify more than one CPU. You can specify 8 CPU cores. And you can specify the amount of memory you want. All right. And this is, remember, this is the amount of RAM that you get. And let's just say we want about 24 gigabytes here. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about policies and wall time. So by default, you're put in your home directory. Your home directory is the only directory you've been working with so far. And your home directory has 100 gigabytes of hard disk space. And hard disk space is where you store files permanently. It's very different from RAM, which is the amount of memory that your programs can consume. Okay, so when you specify 24 gigabytes here, that's the amount of RAM. So your home directory has 100 gigabytes of space. Other than your home directories, there are a few spaces that you are able to write to. And this is something that you need to pay attention to. There is a directory called Scratch2. And within the Scratch2 directory, you already have a directory for yourself. And so Scratch2 / your username is a directory that you have access to. All right. And that's going to be empty, I guess. Mine's empty. Mine's almost empty. And there is also a directory called Scratch1 / your username. So these are other locations that you're able to access. How many of you are not able to access these locations? All right, so everyone's able to access these locations. So let's talk about what Scratch space is. Scratch space is virtually unlimited. Okay, it's not limited by the 100 gigabytes that your home directory has. But here's the deal with the difference between the home directory and the Scratch space is that we back your home directory up. Okay, so tomorrow, if you lose or if you delete something in your home directory, we can give it back to you. The Scratch space is meant to be Scratch space. It's not meant for you to store things permanently. Okay, we don't guarantee that anything that you put in Scratch space will exist tomorrow or at the end of the month or whenever. Okay, the Scratch space can be wiped out whenever, really. So Scratch space is meant to be used by your programs as temporary space. Okay, to store intermediate files or to store the output. But once your program is finished executing, you must move stuff back from your Scratch space into your home directory. If you have more than 100 gigabytes of data and you're not interested in losing it, sorry, can you open the door, please, someone? And if you don't want to lose the data in your Scratch space, it's more than 100 gigabytes. There is storage that's really cheap that you can buy on the Palmetto. And you can get in touch with us on how to get more storage or buy more storage for your group. Yes?
Can you move it directly to your workstation or something?
You can. You're free to do that as long as you can always SCP things back from Scratch space to your workstation or use the file transfer client to do that. But remember that Scratch1 and Scratch2, even though they're virtually unlimited spaces, they're not meant for you to store your files there. Everyone shares Scratch1 and Scratch2, so if you put all your files there, you're making it difficult for other people to run their programs, and you're filling Scratch up. All right, so talk to us if you need more than 100 gigabytes, and we can sell you storage for really cheap. Okay, so what's the difference between Scratch1 and Scratch2? And this is getting a little bit technical, but bear with me. Scratch1 is a parallel file system. Okay, it's meant to handle very large files, and it's meant to handle files that you write or read from in a parallel way. Okay, so if you don't know what you're doing, you probably want to use Scratch2 instead. If you have lots of tiny files, so if you have files that are maybe a few megabytes, but you have many of them, and this is the kind of data you work with, you want to work with Scratch2. Okay, it's a serial file system, but it's going to be faster for many small files. If you have 1 or 2 large files that your program works with, and you're reading and writing to them in a parallel way, then you want to use Scratch1. If you're already using Scratch1 for many small files, you'll see that it actually behaves very slowly. If you go into Scratch1 and type in ls, and it takes forever, That's because you have many small files, and they're not meant to be handled using a parallel file system. You want to use Scratch 2 instead. Okay, if you're seeing that problem, you'll see that Scratch 2 is magnitudes faster. So that's how Scratch 1 and Scratch 2 are different. But remember that they're supposed to be treated as Scratch file systems, not permanent storage. Okay, we don't guarantee that your data will be there tomorrow at all. Another location that you can read and write to is called local Scratch. And this is just a temporary directory for your programs to use. Okay, all of this is junk. If your programs need a temporary directory for you to read and write to, local Scratch is an option. Okay, and local Scratch disappears when you log out. Okay, it's not there after you log out of the compute node. So if you're in the login node, you won't be able to access local Scratch. Local Scratch is only accessible from within a compute node. Okay, and it's local to that compute node, and it disappears the minute your job ends. Okay, so local Scratch is truly local. It's only for your programs to read and write to temporarily, but it's very fast. And the amount of local Scratch you can see when you exit the login or the compute node and type in what's free again. You see the amount of local Scratch, or you should. Let's see here. Let's look at hardware table. There should be a column here that tells you how much local Scratch is. Yeah. So for example, any node on phase 7A has 240 gigabytes of local Scratch available to it. Okay. So there are 4 places that you can read and write to. Can someone tell me which ones they are? This is important. So there's your home directory, Scratch 1, Scratch 2, and local Scratch. And this is what they're all good for. Your home directory is backed up. You can store your data permanently there. Scratch directories are used for your programs to use temporarily or for over a very short span of time before you put the data back into your local machine or to storage that you've purchased. And local Scratch is only for the duration of your job, okay, no longer than that. So that's what the different locations are for. You generally don't want to, if your program is reading and writing files a lot, you don't want to use the home directory to do that because it's not a very fast file system. Okay, you want to take your program and your data, put it into Scratch, run your program there, and once you have the results, bring your results back to your home directory. That's the general workflow on the Palmetto. And it's especially important if you're concerned with the I/O speed. Okay, so that was a mouthful, and it's nearing 2 p.m. So let's just break for about 5 minutes or 10, and we'll come back and we'll go through a real workflow on the Palmetto, including loading some software that we need, running an analysis on a bunch of files on Scratch file system, bringing the results back to our local machines. So we'll go through the process of an actual workflow in about 10 minutes. So we'll meet back here at 2:10.